Howdy, 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 and welcome back to Jimmy the Nerd. It's been a while since I've done any update videos. I've actually been taking a break from working on the game. I started working on a book on how to make an RPG. So I'm going to show you some of the stuff I did get done before I started working on the book. Basically, it just started feeling like a chore working on the game, and that's always a sign to me that I need to work on something else for a while. It's time to take a break and work on something else. And I had been thinking about doing a video series on how to make an RPG, coming from the perspective of a storyteller, a writer, which I'd noticed that most of the video series on making games and stuff in RPG makers specifically, but generally tutorial videos on YouTube and even books that you could already buy, they focus almost entirely on one of two things. The people who do the video series on YouTube, mostly it's graphics. People that's their main discipline, and they spend a lot of time focusing on graphics. Or the other people that mostly do stuff that you can do in the program, tips and tricks types of people. Hardly anyone spends any time covering the processes of storytelling, actually knowing when to use certain game mechanics, why you use certain game mechanics. You know, you can find plenty of tutorials on how to implement things, but hardly anybody goes into the actual game development theory behind it all. And most importantly, I could not find anyone who had already done series that I could find, I'm not saying nobody's done it, on how to do outlining, how to actually go from having your idea to having a developed outline for your game, so you don't find yourself sitting staring at a screen going, I don't know what happens next. So, that, just in brief, that's what the book's going to be about. I'm going to go through the entire process, and I'm going to do another video about the book itself that'll cover things a little bit more in depth, but I want to go through the entire process of how you go from having an idea to everything all the way through to having the music you're going to have for your game. You know, first in, more of a theoretical format, and then actually going through the process with a hypothetical game. Even doing some stuff like mapping and stuff. I'm going to do some mapping videos to show how you get certain things and elicit certain moods, go for certain... I'm going to show you how to implement the theoretical stuff by actually walking you through the process of making a game, at least in a hypothetical way. So if you're interested in game development using RPG Maker, or anything else for that matter, because I'm going to have an extensive section on horror, fiction, and game development, basically you'll be able to use this book as a resource for writing fiction, game development, of pretty much any genre, but specifically RPGs. As I said, an extensive section on horror, fiction, and game development. You'll be able to use it even for pen and paper RPGs as a game master. So, I want it to be a fairly comprehensive tool that's going to cover a variety of topics that all tie into the game development process in making an RPG, outlining. So, as I said, you can go from having an idea to having a properly developed outline, so you never find yourself not knowing what to do. So that's the book, and as I said, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in another video. So now I can kind of show you what I've been working on here. And what I was saying about the graphics people, if graphics is your thing, of course you're going to spend a lot of time on graphics, but my view on it is that the story and the game mechanics are the two important things. knowing how to do 1,001 things or 1,000,001 things doesn't help if you aren't, if you don't know when and where or why to do them. You need an idea and you need a reason for using those tips and tricks. And the fact that there's so many videos up showing you how to do them, it means you don't need to know all of them before you start making a game. You learn that stuff as you're making the game, and it comes up and you need to learn them. As for the graphics, there are AAA studios who have spent millions of dollars on their graphics, and the game still bombed because it sucked. So my view is focus on story, focus on game mechanics, then do the best graphics that you're capable of doing. In this case, I can show you like the Cursed Village here, or the Cursed Forest. I've did a video about this map. I've actually done a little bit more work on it with some light parallax mapping to cover up the entire black areas with leaf cover, just so it looks a bit more natural, I guess. To me, this is a really nice looking map. This is, I'm not saying this is the absolute best I could do, but it is exactly what I want it to be. It looks the way I want it to look. It, in game, it has the mood and atmosphere that I wanted. And I spent maybe 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours working on it. Maybe a bit more or less, somewhere in there. I spent a while working on it, but not weeks. The way that some parallax map type people might do that, because graphics isn't my thing. I made it look as good as I wanted it to look and needed it to look for what I'm going for. So, I think some people get into that trap of beating themselves up over the graphics that they're using or can use. I'm using the first seed material FSM packs from RPG Maker because I like the look of these graphics. I am eagerly awaiting the next one. Hopefully that one will have like a winter type stuff. That's what I'm hoping for. Maybe winter and desert would be nice. They usually go with like 2 different things per pack. Well, the first one was for towns and basic forest areas, grassland areas. This one, the second pack, was mines and caves, mines and forests. Caves and Forests is the name of the pack. And anyway, I like the look of the graphics. It allows me to do quite a bit of stuff. I also have some older graphics packs that I've gotten that they're going to look a little bit cartoony compared to this stuff, but each area will have its own feel, which is fine. That's what I'm going for. There's also the High Village here. I've completed. Go ahead and zoom out completely so you can see the entire thing. So I got inspired to do this one from a video tutorial on YouTube. A speed mapping tutorial. I wanted to give that not necessarily the speedy part, but I wanted to try what I saw the guy doing in the video, like it was kind of like this, but I did it my own way, as I always do, put my own spin on it. This is going to be the first village you come to in the game besides the Traveling Inn, which is from the first game. If you haven't played the Jack Hoth game, there's an inn in there that kind of follows you around. In this case, it's going to act like as a hub. That's where we start. It's very small compared to this one. You can see just how big this map is in comparison. But yeah, there's going to be some animals wandering around, and I'm using Yanfly's Doodad plugin, so there's going to be some. I do stuff like using flowers to soften edges and just adding things. I had this house is built right into the hill. I thought that looked kind of cool when I did that. I'm sure other people have done it. I just thought it was a fun idea to have one of the houses built right into the hill. It might be like the mayor's house or something. Then there's a little cemetery down here. And there's going to be a cave that you'll be questing in. So, like I said, talking about doing the graphics, to me, this is a very nice map. With all the doodads and everything, and the waterfall, and using the graphics pack, using all the cool stuff that has in it. I think this is a very nice looking map. Spent a few hours working on it, got it to where I wanted it. I'm happy with it. I haven't done the interiors yet, so that's going to be another task to complete, but I will when I will. So, anywho, basically, it's kind of a small village. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 houses. But, that's about the size of most RPG games, villages, maybe even a bit bigger. Especially since there are no shops here. That is one thing this is actual scale, so it's a pretty damn big map. The inn, go up here, and zoom back out a little bit, so you can see the whole thing more or less. So this is the traveling inn. As I said, it's going to be the hub for the game. There'll be teleport sites, magic teleporters, basically. I might call them Scotty's teleporters or something. A little tip of the hat to Star Trek. But anyway, it's always been a bit of an oddity to me. It's a cliche, perhaps, that every time you go to a new village or city or whatever in an RPG, they always manage to have just one more weapon or piece of armor or a couple of new spells or whatever that are perfect for the level that you are at that time, or to give you just that one next upgrade. So that didn't work for me. One, I would rather do something simpler. It's easier on me to do it this way, but also it makes it a little bit easier for the player and gives them some choices, in a way, in that there will be these 3 stores, and they will have everything available right from the start of the game. Which might sound game-breaking, but I can show you kind of why it's not. For one thing, this is a very skill-based game, not gear-based. So the increases to your stats that the armor and weapons give you isn't that substantial. But what can be very useful is that some of them have additional element things like fire or silver that, depending on the enemies you're going up against, can be very useful. I am using Yanfly's equipment plugin that allows you to switch your equipment during battles. I'm not sure how often I'll allow you to switch your equipment during battles, but it'll mean that you'll be able to tune your party to your enemies through the game. So you'll be able to defeat them easier. It gives another layer of strategy, essentially. But there is also, it's not just about giving the player choices, because you'll be able to do things if you want, like buying all the best stuff for just one character and ending up with one super character, basically. Which probably isn't the best way to do it, but you could if you wanted to. Probably the more conservative and probably better way to do it would be to gradually, buy new stuff for your party as you can afford it, because that's going to be the limiter there, is the money available to you. But again, that will add another level of strategy, because you're going to have to make choices on, do you buy more healing stuff, Or do you go ahead and buy some more armor? Do you get curatives and things like that? Or do you get a new spiffy weapon? Okay, and who do you buy the weapon and armor for? You spend some money on new spells, or, gives you some more options. You'll have to make some choices. I like that. But there is also a narrative reason and a realistic reason in that, go back over here to the village, you can see this. There might be a one thing that has a general store, but you won't necessarily be able to buy anything there unless I do some crafting or something in the game. I'm thinking about it. You have to buy ingredients for potions and stuff instead of just being able to buy them outright. Or they're more expensive if you want to buy them outright, and you can get stuff to make them, and they'll be cheaper that way. I haven't decided yet. Every single thing like that requires more work. Do I want to put work into it? Is it going to be worth doing that? Is it going to add something to the game? Or am I just adding in a new mechanic that doesn't really need to be there just for the sake of having it? I haven't weighed everything out and made a decision yet, but maybes. Anyway, in real life, villages like this, and it isn't necessarily unrealistic for a village to only have 10 houses in it, because most of the people who will live will live outside. They'll be living on farms and in small communities and stuff near the village, and they'll come here. Actually, that's something I didn't leave room for, is a square. Well, yeah, there's just a square right here. Yeah, this is like a village square right over in here. They would come here maybe once a month or something to sell their goods. So the town might have a general store, and that would be about it. Otherwise, everything else, the fishermen would bring in their fish, and they would sell their fish every day. And everything else they would buy maybe once a month or a couple of times a month. Or, whenever people come and bring stuff. That's how villages like this would actually have worked back in the day. And even in cities, they wouldn't necessarily have had a specialty shop selling magic and armor and weaponry. So it is not unrealistic at all to do it like that. On top of that, narratively speaking, the area of the game world, the setting that this whole game takes place in, is rather sparsely populated. It is not a very friendly region to live in. This town is right on the outskirts of it, where it's safer. There's other communities that are deeper into it, but the further into this area, it's a part of the world that's been greatly affected by magic, so that it's a very chaotic, crazy place that, I say it in the description of the game, it draws on your fears and the things you love and hate and fears and everything, and brings them to life. And the further in you go, the worse it gets. And basically, Jimmy has been brought here against his will by someone who wants to kill him. But they want to break him first. So they're going to force him to stay in this area until it destroys him. Whereas the people who live here, they kind of know how to put up with it. But there's not a lot of them. So there will be villages, quite a few villages, small cities, but you're going to have to go back to the inn to buy your specialty items, because the stuff that you're using is kind of your personal specialty goods. I'll probably put additional shops in for weapons for a couple of the characters who are going to be natives to the area. Go ahead and go into the the back end of the game here, the database. So, Lionhearted, Crescent Moon, and Shibata are all going to be natives of this particular land. So I'll probably put in their weapons as separate separate stores, or I'll just put a function in that once you have them as part of your party, maybe somebody new will show up at the end that'll be selling stuff for them. One or the other. Probably the thing with the inn, because I like the idea of maintaining it as your hub. That's where you go back to, in between everywhere else. So I don't know how much of this stuff I covered in prior videos. Jimmy got a bit of a makeover, Punter got a makeover, Lionhearted got a makeover, because I wanted to do some tribal stuff with the Orcus people. That you're going to encounter another tribe of the Orcus peoples that are having some troubles later in the game. Sentimental got a bit of a makeover. He looks a bit more like himself here, or who he's based on anyway. Crescent Moon I did a little bit of a makeover on, I think. Ruin I made really different, I believe. I wanted one character that looked a bit outlandish. So I've gotten their individual elements, and I've been doing stuff for them, giving any special abilities and stuff that they have. Skills, I'm still working on the skills. There's a lot of them. I mean, at this point, go down here, well over 400, I think. Or around 400. I mean, there's a lot of gaps in there, so I don't know exactly how many there are. Let's see. I've also added a Sanity System for Jimmy. So as you go through the game, certain things will affect your sanity, and you will... Let's just say that as the game progresses, if you don't maintain your sanity and keep it up, you allow yourself to become unhinged, basically, over time, you have detrimental effects that will occur. It isn't going to be a major mechanic through the game. I just wanted it to be more like a flavor to the game. A flavoring agent, like adding onion to something in food. Usually it's not the main focus. It's there for the aroma. It's an aromatic. I wanted the Sanity System to be kind of like that. It adds a little bit of extra depth to the game, but I don't want it to be something that you're constantly worrying about. Because micromanaging stuff like that in games, to me, makes it harder to get into the game and stay into the game, immersed. You're worrying more about, a stat than you are getting into the game. So I don't like micromanaging stuff like that. So as I said, just going over some of the whips that Jimmy will be able to use. There's like the Silver Whip, Fire Whip, a Holy Fire Whip, which has the light and deific attack elements. The Rune Whip that only has deific, but it has the highest, or a pretty high attack. And the Nomus Whip, which is the best one, that has a bunch of different, pretty much all the attack elements, and then the highest attack add as well. So that's going to be your ultimate whip weapon that you're going to be able to get. And he's also going to have some secondary weapons that he can use. You can either use 2 whips or these, whatever. He's a dual wielder. So it'll be like, until you can get that Nomus whip, say it backwards and you'll get it. The other ones, it'll depend on the enemies you're going up against. Like, even though the Rune Whip gives you 25 attack, if you're going up against something that's weak against Silver, even though it only gives you 10 attack, the fact that it's probably going to be taken anywhere from 150 to 200% damage from you because you're using, or at least from your regular attacks because you're using Silver, would mean it's worth equipping the Silver weapon. And as I said, I'm using the plugin that'll allow you to switch your equipment during battle. Armor-wise, I'm not going to let you see all the things like the accessories and all that stuff. I'll just talk about the armor. It's the same armors from the Jackhoth game because I like it. It's a nice selection. It gives you a good range to work with. And taking a bit of a nod from Dungeons & Dragons, heavier armor reduces agility and affects your magic. But again, like your defense, even with full plate armor, your defense only goes up by 40, which it's pretty substantial, but then you lose 16 agility and you take a big hit to your magic. Minus 15 at magic attack, minus 40 MP, which, I'll probably increase those. I need to juggle numbers a little bit here. And then it also reduces slashing, crushing, piercing damage because I'm using, again, a bit of a nod from Dungeons & Dragons. I'm using 3 different types of physical damage, depending on the types of weapons being utilized. But full plate is the one with the highest defense increase. Then you can also use shields, which also impact your magic and agility. So if you have somebody decked out in full plate and a large metal shield, they're going to have an additional 56 defense, which is pretty substantial, but they're going to be down 26 agility. Let's see. That's 31 magic attack and 70 magic points. So that's not an insignificant amount of reduction on those stats, unless, if you're talking about somebody that has doesn't have much need for magic, then it's not going to be that big of a hit. The thing is, like the Jackhoth game, everyone uses MP for some skills and abilities. And of course, losing agility means you go later in the turn, and reducing magic attack will impact certain skills as well. Then you have the reverse stuff that for the magic users that reduces or doesn't do much boosting for defense, a lot of magic defense, but also does increase magic attack and magic points a bit. Then you have helms that, again, they all decrease. Well, it depends. The light armor ones don't decrease agility, but once you start putting metal on your head, it slows you down. But again, you add a full helm, you're going to get another significant boost to your defense, but another pretty heavy hit to your MP, your attack, magic attack, and agility. Whereas the Magus's head guard boosts defense a little bit, but gives you some magic attack and magic defense. And there's going to be a pretty good selection of... I can go down to types and show you. There's a lot of skill types and elements in here. But there's also going to be artifacts, pets, stones, and talismans and accessories you can find. The pets, stones, and talismans don't give much stat increases. They're kind of collectible items. It's kind of a nod from MMO games. So I have started working on enemies. I hadn't the last video, I'm pretty sure. Total in the game, I know that there's over 400, at least number-wise I'm at over 400, I believe. I don't want to give away too much. Yeah, it's over 400. But there are gaps, so it's high 300s, low 400s in terms of enemies. You know, with different ranks and stuff included, so there's like around 80 or 90 different enemies, completely unique enemies, but then you have all the different ranks of enemies that are in here. Usually basic enemies, like the Phantom here, there's 4 different ranks, but then other ones like the Werebat people, they're all the same rank, essentially, because you're dealing with either the basic Batfolk, Warriors, Mage, Crossbowmen. So there's different ranks, but as you can see with the stats up here, it has more to do with their discipline and whatnot rather than just being different ranks of the same basic creature. So the other thing with enemies is some of them are going to be the same types, sprites, the little chibis, the same as the characters. Some of them are going to be battler images. And the way I made the decision on all of those was that anything like the phantoms or ghosts or undead of various kinds, the Batfolk, because there is the hidden one in Avery, has the really nice freebie stuff. Have to get, have to, but give them a free game in exchange for using this stuff, which is more than a nice deal. More than acceptable. But Hidden One Avery, you can look them up on the RPG Maker forums, because there's all kinds of free resources there, and they have a really, really nice pack of stuff for doing, like animal-based characters, like were characters, basically, or just like cat people, and you can do wolf folk, and I created bat folk by basically combining the look of the wolf people with wings. Or maybe it was the fox. I think I used... It doesn't really matter. You can get some interesting combinations and lizard folk and all that good stuff. So if I could do it in the character generator with free resources, stuff I've bought, stuff that came with the program to begin with, then I did. Or I did my best if it was a human type of enemy. But for things like the entities of, it's Metathanek, I believe, at Metathanet. The entities of Methathanat. I bought a couple of packs of battlers to expand on what I already had. There's also some more free resources. Not Shadowhawk Dragon. Is it Shadowhawk Dragon? No, that's not right, is it? Maybe it is. And also Thalzon, I think is his name. So I'm drawing on some free resources and some paid resources. I didn't want to go too cartoony on this one, so I was trying to find good-looking battlers that weren't too cartoony, because it is supposed to be a horror comedy game, but with an emphasis on horror as far as the combat and enemies go. So this is the Naga image from that, and I think it looks pretty damn creepy, and I thought that kind of fit the name pretty well. There's also like Gibberine Spawn is this worm creature from the one pack. spider things, the shade of skull crawler, scorpion, is what I'm using for that. I think it is Shadowhawk Dragons Battlers. You can look up, there's all kinds of free resources. Like I said, I was looking specifically for ones that were sufficiently creepy, or at least not too cartoony. Slimy ones. You know, all RPGs seem to have some sort of a slime creature. Atoshi Boot, which is basically a minor elemental, like it's an air one. I haven't done all of the traits and stuff for any of the enemies yet. I'm still, this is what I was working on, and just doing all of this stuff, it started feeling a bit like a chore, so I needed to take a break. Then we've got like another Atoshi Boot down here, which it's a ghost from Thalzon, I believe. That's probably an ice one. Then there's a blob, which is from the one pack. This one is one that I used from the default resources, but I thought shifting people, it looked okay. Here's a fire Atoshi Boot. If you're wondering, Atoshi Boot, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, is a will-o'-the-wisp, same basic sort of thing, but a different country. I think it was Atoshi. It may have been Japanese, maybe someplace. I think it was definitely Asian. Atoshi Boot. It may have been like Thailand or something. Because they've got tons and tons of ghosts in that part of the world. There's, lots of really weird ones too. Kind of cool. But, I wanted some of the standard types of enemies, but maybe with different names and slightly different personalities. I did actually do the traits on this one. Some of them I have, some of them I haven't, I guess. But yeah, the enemies, they're getting there. Again, once I get back to working on the game, that'll be what I get back to working on. Animations, I went ahead and bought a couple of packs of animations. There's only 2 available. So there's a pretty substantial selection of animations I'm going to be drawing on for skills and everything, and I keep adding more. Like, some of them, it's just the basic ones, but with different color schemes and stuff for different types of enemies. Well, that was a delay. Just little things like that. Different sound effects and whatnot. We got some things like shotguns and all sorts of fun stuff. So, yeah. Quite a variety. There's going to be quite a variety of animations. I'm going to be utilizing the original ones, the default ones too. It's because I don't have a problem with them. But they're going to be heavily supplemented. The only other major thing I can think of is like some of the characters that have spellcasting abilities. I started adding in some different graphics, like Jimmy, instead of doing the usual chant pose, he's going to have like his hand held out and energy spiking off of his fingers. off his hand, and he's gonna kind of shimmies back and forth. And then when he casts his spell, there's a little effect on his hand down here. I'm going to be doing that for all the characters pretty much. Except for the ones like Shibata. I mean, he's just a get in your face and beat the shit out of you kind of character, so he doesn't need a whole lot of modification. Ouch. But the ones who have spell casting, I will be doing something with them to individualize their spell casting. For their battler graphics. And I think that's pretty much everything I've worked on. This is kind of a long video, isn't it? But it had been a while since I did an update video, and I wasn't quite sure what I did in the last one. So another thing that's going to be different about the inn is that there are going to be different prices for different levels of healing, basically. So I haven't really implemented any of this stuff yet. I haven't started implementing it. I still need to make the characters, actually. But I think there's going to be like 4 levels of comfort at the inn. Basically, there's going to be like sleeping on the common mats down here will be the absolute bottom of the barrel. Then you'll have a common room where you'll have a bed, but it's like a shared beds or rooms. Then there'll be private rooms that'll be the most comfortable of those, and then there will be the spa room, which is where you would want to go ahead and spend the dosh to sleep in the spa or stay in the spa if your sanity is dropping or is getting really bad. So there are going to be ways to deal with a high insanity score. You just have to pay a bit extra. Well, it's going to be kind of expensive because I don't want it to be so easy to reduce your insanity level that it's inconsequential to the game, but at the same time, like I said earlier, I don't want you micromanaging it either, because then to me that just gets irritating and detracts from the game. So it's going to be a balancing thing. I'm going to have to figure out the right balance so that you actually do run into insanity problems at times, but it'll only ever get bad if you let it get bad, basically. Because, some games, like Amnesia has a similar type of system, a sanity system, which it all draws on the Cthulhu games, pen and paper, and then video games, the Lovecraftian games. And in those games, it's fine that it's a major mechanic because that's a major part of those games. But in this, I don't want it to be constant irritation or something you're constantly worrying about. It's just a bit of flavor, basically. So yeah, I think that wraps everything up. Thanks very much for watching. I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.